guys, welcome back for episode number 134. I actually don't have too many games to talk about today, so maybe I'll actually get around to unboxing Shasn and Shasn Azadi for this video since they're still in shrink wrap. So anyway, so let's just get started. Let's talk about Katmai, the Bears of Brooks River. So this is a 2025 game for 2 players, designed by Peter Ridgway, and the art is done by Tom Lopez, and it's published by Osprey Games. And this is a review copy, which I received from Osprey. Now this is an area control game, and each player is going to sit on one side of the river, and you are going to have a family of bears. It's also a hand management game, so you're going to have some cards in your hand, which you're going to be playing on your side of the river, trying to gain dominance of certain sections of the river. And if you gain dominance of a certain section of the river after all the cards have been played during that phase of the game, then you'll be able to place salmon tokens on objectives if you've met any of the objectives. This game is going to be played over several rounds, and then after however many rounds you've played, which depends on when the game end is triggered, then you'll see who has the most salmon tokens on the objectives, and whoever does will win this game. So you're going to have these river tiles laid out between you and your opponent. So it'll be horizontal like this, and you're going to place cards on your side of the river. So these are double-sided. So on one side it's autumn, and on the other side it looks like it is summer. And there's different icons on these tiles, and I'll explain what those are. Each person is going to have bears in their own color. So once you gain dominance of a certain area, you'll get to place a bear token on a section of the river that you want to. And then each person has their salmon tokens in their own color in order to place on the objectives, as well as a baby bear, which will be useful for breaking ties in case there's any ties. So let me just show you some of the cards that you'll have in your hand. So there's like these light brown bears and the darker brown bears. So one person will be the light brown and the other person will be the dark brown. So you'll see that all of these bears are actual bears who live in this area or lived at one point. I don't know if they're all still alive. And some of these bears will have a special ability that will trigger as soon as you play it. And you can also see the icon up here for what that ability is, because you'll end up covering certain cards. So the icon will let you know what the ability is. But of course you can just remove the card and read the words if you need to. And some bears will show a so icon here. So that will allow you to place a baby bear token in order to break ties if you want to. So not all cards have those icons or special abilities. So for example, this one, it has a high dominance value, but no special icons or special abilities. So there are 12 cards in total, and each player has the same cards, essentially, with the same numbers and same abilities. You are going to shuffle your hand, your deck of 12 cards, and put 2 aside for the round. So that way you won't always have the same cards per round. So after shuffling and putting 2 aside, which will not be used in the current round, then you're going to draw 2 cards so that you have 2 cards in hand. Then simultaneously, well, actually not simultaneously, starting with the player who has the initiative token, which will be randomly determined at the beginning of the game, they have to place their card first face down on a section of the river. Then the other player will place their card face down, and then you will reveal them simultaneously. Now this initiative token, which again is determined randomly at the start of the game, the person who has the initiative token can decide to give it to the other player if they want the other person to have initiative. So whoever has the initiative marker has to place their card down first. And if it was just given to you, you cannot immediately give it back to the other person. You have to wait for the next turn before you decide if you want to give it back to them. Or you can just hang on to it for the entire game if you really want to, but then you'll always be placing your card first. Then starting with initiative, if there are any special abilities on the cards, those are resolved in order of initiative. So while you may get to resolve your ability first, the advantage of not placing your card first is trying to see what other section what section of the river the other player is trying to take control of, and you might be able to, counteract that, or you might try to go for another section of the river. Because let's go over these objective cards so that you can get a sense of what you're trying to do in this game. So there are like some easy objective cards for a simpler game, and then there are the more advanced objective cards. And you're going to have them set up like a triangle. So you're going to have 3 of the easiest objectives to meet at the bottom, and then 2 above that, which are a little bit more difficult, and then the final one, which is at the very top, which will be scored at the end of the game. So I'll just show you some examples of all of them. So, for example, you might have these ones on the very bottom of your objective triangle. This one says occupy any 2 shallow spaces. So shallow spaces have this icon. So again, some of the tiles in the river will have a shallow space on them, like for example this one. However, not every tile is going to have a shallow space on it. So again, you're going to be looking at these objectives when you play your cards to try to determine which areas you want dominance of. This one says occupy 1 deep pool, and 1 rock space on the same river tile. And you're not going to necessarily be able to meet these objectives in one go, because you need to have the requisite number of bears. So for example, this one would require 2 bears. So this is not going to happen in the first turn of a round. It's going to happen maybe on the second turn of a round once you've met that objective. This one says occupy any 2 rock spaces along the entire river. So these are the objectives that are easiest to meet. And if you meet these objectives, you will place 1 salmon token on it, since there is 1 diamond at the top of these cards. And you can meet an objective more than once, but you cannot use the same bear tokens in order to meet the same objective. So you would have to have different bear tokens along the river in order to meet that objective again. And then above that level of the triangle, you have the ones that are a little bit harder to meet. So for example, this one says occupy 4 spaces in a square shape. So this one would be a little bit more difficult to meet. And of course, you have to have a minimum of 4 turns before you meet this, because it requires 4 bears. And if you meet this, then you would place 2 salmon tokens on it. This one says occupy 4 connected spaces without rocks. So you need adjacency, but none of those spaces that the bears are on can be rock spaces. So those are examples of second level objectives that you will be trying to meet throughout the game. And then finally, the top layer of the triangle is going to be the one that is scored at the end of the game. And this one says occupy the most spaces on the 3 tiles furthest upstream. So here is an example of one that will be scored at the end of the game, and you will, whoever wins this one will place 3 salmon tokens on it. Another one, for example, is occupy the largest single group of connected spaces. So there is variety in terms of these objective cards, and there is more than one of each type. So you're going to have your triangle of objectives there, and you're going to play 10 cards in a round. So after each player has placed their cards upside down and revealed it, and you've resolved those cards, if any of them have a special ability on it, then you're going to draw 1 more card from your draw deck. Again, not the 2 cards that were set aside, but from your draw deck, which consisted of 10 cards to start the game with. So you'll draw 1 more card. So you'll always have 2 cards in hand, of course, not for the last turn of the game. So you're going to have 2 cards in hand to choose from, and then decide which card to play next. You can only have a maximum of 3 cards on your side of the river next to any river tile. So you cannot have more than 3 cards. However, there are certain cards which will allow you to move cards that you've previously played. So like, let's suppose you do have 3 cards on a river section, but now you see that the other person is gaining dominance on that section of the river, and you really want dominance on that section of the river. You might have a card in hand that allows you to move a card from that section of the river to elsewhere, and then you can play a higher number card on that section of the river. And there's certain cards that are affected by other cards that are played, which determines their dominance value. So for example, This one says lefty's dominance is the same as the dominance of the card on top of him. So when you play this card, you don't know what the dominance level of lefty is yet until you play another card on top of lefty. So now if I play Holly on top of lefty, so now lefty has a dominance of 3 and Holly has a dominance of 3. So now I have a dominance of 6 on this section of the river. So you're going to continue in this fashion until both players have played 10 cards. Then you will determine, starting from upstream going downstream, who has dominance of each section of the river. And whoever has dominance will get to place one of their bear tokens on a section, a quadrant in that part of the river that they won dominance of. So if I won dominance of this river tile, because my card number's dominance value was higher than my opponent's, then I can place a bear on one of these 4 quadrants. So you're going to evaluate each section of the river starting from upstream going downstream. After you place a bear token, you will always check to see if you've met one of the objectives, and if you have, you will place your salmon tokens as appropriate on that objective card. So you're going to do this after every single time you place a bear token. So again, you're going to, check for objectives during that part of the game. After you've completed that part of the game, then you will check to see if game end has been met. After everyone has placed their bears, you've checked for dominance, you've placed your bear tokens, and checked for objectives. The game end is likely not going to be triggered after the first round of the game, but here are the game end conditions. At the end of a round, if you have at least 4 more bears placed than your opponent, you win immediately. At the end of a round, if you have 0, 1, or 2 bears left in your supply after the catch salmon phase, the game ends immediately and you move on to scoring. So in the game we played, I believe it took us 2 or 3 rounds before the game ended. Very unlikely for it to happen after the first round. So after a round ends, you then take all of the cards you played in front of your, on your side of the river. You take the 2 cards that had been set aside at the beginning of the round and then shuffle all the cards together again. And again, you're going to set aside 2 cards. So that way there's, always going to be some variability and an element of not knowing which cards you have, because if you always have the same cards, then you can maybe plan more strategically about what you want to do. But with this way, you will always know that there's 2 cards set aside, and one of them might have an ability that you really want to use, but it may not come up. So again, you'll shuffle, put 2 cards aside, and then draw 2 cards to start the next round with. And again, you'll play a card, and then after revealing those cards simultaneously, you'll draw another card and then play a card, and you're going to do that again until you have 10 cards on your side of the river. And again, a lot of these cards have special abilities on them that can affect you or the other player. And again, you can pass this initiative token to the other player if you want them to place their card first, and it can be passed throughout the game. However, again, if you receive it, you cannot immediately pass it back to the player who just gave it to you. You have to wait until the next turn. If there is a tie for dominance on a certain section of the river, that's when the baby bear token can come into play. The person who has initiative has the first option of placing their baby bear marker on this card that contains this symbol. So if you have a card that contains a baby bear symbol on it, you can place a baby bear token on it to break the tie. So there is a special rule about the bear token, baby bear token. So it says the player with the initiative token may place their bear cub token first, if at all. A player cannot place a bear cub token on a card if any of the other player's bears on the opposite side of the river tile already has a bear cub token on it. So again, the player with the initiative marker gets to decide first if they want to place a bear cub token, and then the other player could be prevented from placing a bear cub token if they want to. So bear cub tokens can be used to break ties. So it says bear cub tokens are used as dominance tiebreakers. When players work out their total dominance during the place bears phase, bear tokens that is, a player who has a card with a so icon against the river tile may place their bear cub token on that card to break the tie. This token cannot be used again until the next round. And again, the player with the initiative marker gets that option first. So again, the player with the initiative marker has to place their card first before the other player decides where to place their card, and then you reveal simultaneously. So there are advantages to having this and disadvantages, because if you're the second player, you can kind of play more defensively when you see where the first player is placing their card. So anyway, so that is Katmai, really. So you're going to play a certain number of rounds until game end is triggered. So again, you're going to play cards, 10 cards during the first phase of the game. Then you resolve for dominance and you place out the bear tokens if you won dominance on a certain section of the river, and you're trying to place them on certain sections to meet objectives, and by looking at these symbols to see whether you're placing on a rock or a shallow or a deep pool or a waterfall and so on. And then at the end of the game, you're going to count up who has the most salmon tokens, and whoever does will win this game. And that is Katmai. So it's a pretty straightforward, easy game to play. And I would say it's a pretty good area control game for 2 players. I think it plays really well. So if you love bears, which I absolutely do, I really, really love bears, and you love area control games, and you're looking for a good 2-player game that plays pretty quickly, I would definitely recommend that you check out Katmai. And do read the rules carefully. The first time I read the rules, I kind of ignored the red box, which is really important. So do not ignore the red boxes. So that has probably like some really important information. Not probably, it does. It has really important information that you do not want to miss. So when we played this game, we actually had to start over because when we were playing, I missed the red part where it says you have to play 10 cards first before you go to the place bears phase. So after each time we were playing a card and revealing it, we were placing out bear tokens, and we were like, this game is too easy. Like, it's not competitive. Like, we're not even like competing for bear spots, because like, she would place on one end of the river, I would try to like kind of go to the other, and we were just kind of looking at objectives and placing out salmon tokens like crazy. And then I went back and read the rules and read what was written in the red box, and I realized that no, you do that phase until you have 10 cards, and then you determine who has dominance, not after each card you play. So definitely read the red boxes in the rule book, very important. So then we played correctly, and of course once we played correctly it made a lot more sense. And then it was very competitive. So when we were playing incorrectly, totally not competitive, and just we're placing bears left and right and placing salmon tokens left and right. So yeah, not the way to play. But yeah, I really enjoy this game, and I really love how this rule book tells you a little bit about each of the bears that you will find in the game. So again, real life bears, and you can read about them, which is really cool. And I like that there's a bear named Sarah, although she doesn't have an H at the end of her name, but it says, Sarah doesn't show up at Brooks River every year, but when she does, she spends most of her time at the lower river. So I wonder where she goes for the other years when she doesn't show up at the river. But yeah, so you can read about all of these bears. I like that there's a bear named Milkshake. Milkshake raised unusually large litters of up to 4 cubs and expertly caught fish to feed her hungry clan. So really cool that it's based on true real life bears. And not to get political, but bears really need our help. They are under threat. So if you follow the news and follow environmental conservation news, which I do, so I follow different groups on Instagram and Facebook, bears are very much under threat, as are animals everywhere, to be honest. But read up about it and see what you can do to help protect bears, because animals definitely need our protection. So please do look into that as well. So anyway, so that was Katmai. So let's move on. So another game I played recently is called Moorland, which is a 2023 game for 2 to 4 players, designed by Stefan Bogen, and the art is done by Anika Heller, and is published by Deep Print Games. Now this is an interesting, like, abstract kind of game in which you have a modular board, and you can have a different orientation, like a different setup for each game. There's going to be like route building, and there's going to be set collection and open drafting, and tile placement with cards. So basically you are trying to create an ecosystem, and you are trying to collect these different kinds of seeds and place them on top of cards, but you can't place cards unless you have those seeds. Very interesting abstract game. So it's going to be a little bit hard to explain without the game in front of me. But again, on your turn, there's going to be one card which will show which kinds of seeds you can collect on that turn. So it might show, for example, purple and green, in which case you can only select a combination of purple and green seeds to place on your board if you want to. You don't even have to collect them if you don't want to. But where you place them matters. So on your board, you're going to see certain circles with like little pips inside of them, which indicates when during the collect phase how many seeds you can collect in total of the depicted colors that are out for that round. So if there's a section on my board that has spaces for seeds available and that circle has 2 pips in it, then I can take up to 2 seeds. So I could take 2 of one color or 1 of each different color that is currently on the card available, showing which seeds I can take in that round. So I can take seeds and then I have to pick a card. So these cards show you different spaces for seeds that you might be able to plant, like have rooted, but not necessarily. But it definitely shows you which color seeds you need to have on a certain section of your board before you can place that card down onto your board. So you're trying to connect a river pathway, and you want to make sure that your river pathway connects and leads to different areas of your board, because you can only, again, place it if you have the seeds required on that section of the board. So for example, let's suppose I got a card which showed 1 purple and 1 white required. If on my board I have already a purple and a white seed on a section of my board, then I can take that card, lift up those seeds, and then place that card down because I met the requirement to place that card by having the required colored seeds. The card may indicate, oh, you have to discard 1 of the required seeds. It may say you can root 1 of the seeds by planting it. So any seeds which are not discarded or rooted have to now flow. So you have to be able to flow them by using the river that you just placed and reach out and go somewhere else. So now you're going to take the seeds which are not rooted or discarded in order to place that card, and you're going to have to make them go along the stream and end up somewhere else on your board. So if there is nowhere for them to end up, they will end up discarded and go to your discard section of your player board and be worth negative points at the end of the game. 1 point per seed that ends up on your player board. So you will lose 1 point if your seeds don't have somewhere else to go. There are a couple of spaces on the board that you start with where you can plant root any color seed. So those are beneficial. But the cards you're picking up and trying to place onto your board, those require specific colors and can only specific colored seeds can be rooted on them. So, you may get lucky, and as you're traveling along your stream, you might be able to deposit a seed somewhere on one of the neutral spaces that your board comes with if you need to. That comes in really handy towards the end of the game. As you start filling up your board more and more with stream sections, it's going to get harder and harder to move the seeds you have to available spaces or to, other to available spaces. So you might run out of spaces to move them to, or your stream connection might not lead somewhere where there is space available because your stream just didn't connect to that space. So it gets harder and harder as the game progresses. That's kind of the gist of the game. So when you collect a card, there are 2 spaces beneath your player board where you can store a card. So if you can't place it right away, you can store it beneath your player board. However, you only are limited to 2 spaces there. So if those 2 spaces are already occupied with cards and you still are not able to place those cards, and it's your turn to take a new card, you will have to then turn a card upside down, which will be worth a negative point at the end of the game, and place it onto your board somewhere. So that's what you would have to do in the event that you really can't place a card, but you absolutely have to because the 2 storage spaces underneath your board are already taken. The first player to place a card somewhere within their moor will receive a water token. So there's going to be these cards with water tokens on them. And each player has the same configuration for their moor. And so whoever places a portion of a stream on a section first gets a water token. If you don't use those water tokens, they're worth 1 point at the end of the game each. Otherwise, you can use them to just pick up a seed from anywhere on your board and move it somewhere else, which can be really beneficial. Because otherwise, the only way to move seeds is by placing down cards and having your seeds travel along the stream and then end up somewhere. So those water tokens can be really beneficial for just moving the seeds that you need to. So at the beginning of the game, you might be collecting a lot of seeds, and it's really great because then you can put down more cards. But again, as you start filling up more and more of your moor, it's going to get harder and harder to manage those seeds and get them to where you need to go, and you might end up with negative points. So at the end of the game, you're going to get points for a variety of different things. So some of these cards will have like a certain bug icon on them, and you're going to have set collection points. So if you have pairs of certain bugs, each pair will be worth 2 points. If you have a variety of different kinds of bugs, then the more different kinds of bugs you have, the more points you will get. There's these like other bugs that appear in the river. Whoever has the most of those will get a certain number of points. And then you'll get points for your longest stream. So you'll count up all the tiles that make up your longest route, and you'll get points for that. And then of course you'll lose points again for any tokens that ended up on your board or any cards that you had to place upside down. So really interesting abstract game. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was just a really nice kind of like tile placement, route building game. Just very it was kind of thinky as well, like with the seeds. Like as you start playing, it gets really more thinky with how you need to manage your seeds and try to get them to flow into the right sections and so on. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you should definitely check it out. So again, I don't own this game, but I played with a friend's copy and I enjoyed it. So I thought I would talk about it. So that was Moorland. So let's move on. So a couple other games I played again recently. I played another game of 1980 Sixtina. This time I played a 3-player game of it, and the people I played with enjoyed it as well. They hadn't played before. I played a 4-player game of Galileo Galilei, and if you watch my top 10 of 2024 games, you will know that that was my #1 game. In this game, so I played with people who had never played before, and I believe I came in 3rd place in this game, which I was kind of disappointed about considering that I had played before and the other players hadn't. And I had played like 2 times before. I found that in this game, I was just not making as many major observations as I had in previous games, but I was upgrading more of my telescope pieces. So I guess I was more focused on that. But yeah, so I enjoyed my play of that, and I played Courtesans again, which is, just a nice little filler game to play. So yeah, so those are some other games that I played recently. So let's move on. So let's move on to games that I am backing. So I'm actually backing something. I am backing this game called A Place for All My Books. Like, I didn't think that there would be anything coming out on Kickstarter that I would be interested in, but then this came out and it just looks really adorable. And as someone who really loves to read, like in addition to the 2 books that I read for my book club that I have, book clubs that I have in my weekly videos, I'm also reading another book usually on the side for fun. So I'm usually reading 3 books at a time. So I really love reading, and I've just really been into reading a lot lately again. So when this game came out, I was just really interested in it, and the art style is really adorable. Like usually that kind of art style doesn't appeal to me too much, but it kind of really works for this game, I feel like. So it's, about collecting books and placing them and organizing them in different parts of your house. And you can go into town if you have enough of a social battery and go into different parts of town and do different things. And the town board is super cute. So it just looks really, really adorable. So I'm backing that. It's supposed to be a really good, like, thinky tile placement game. According to, I think Rado said it's like really crunchy or something. He said, it's rare to find a game this cozy and crunchy at the same time. Don't know how crunchy because I haven't played it, but it looks really adorable. So we'll see. So yeah, so I'm backing this, and then of course I'm backing Baghdad at the pledge manager level in order to get my production copy of that game, since I did cover it for its Kickstarter. So those are the only games that I am currently backing. So let's move on. So as I mentioned, I don't have a lot of games to discuss in this video, so I thought I would finally unbox Shasn. I think I'll just do one of them in this video. I think I'll unbox Shasn Azadi because I think we determined that it can be a standalone game and it's not necessarily an expansion to Shasn. So it's a pretty big box, just like Shasn's box was. So let's unbox it and see what is inside. So again, if you watch my video where I talked about these games arriving, I honestly do not know how I ended up with these games because I think they're review copies, but I don't have any record of emails to the publisher asking for review copies of this game. And I did back the campaign at $1, but then I never completed my pledge manager. So I really have no clue how I ended up with these games, but I did. So maybe I ended up filling out some form some point online or something, and that's why I have no record of an email or anything to them. Who knows? I really don't know. I can't remember, to be honest. I really cannot remember if I like somehow requested these games and then received them. But I have them now, so I should try to play them. So I think they're review copies. Maybe I should reach out to the publisher and ask them how I ended up with these games. But yeah, so here is the rule book. Pretty hefty, I would say. We've got some punch boards. Love that new board game smell, really nice. On the back of these, it says that the top tokens are legacy tokens and the bottom ones are infamy tokens. Okay, then we've got a board here and there's a backside to this board as well. So again, never played. I actually don't know anything about this game, except I think what I know about this from what I read that one time was that it is a semi-cooperative game. Yeah. Interesting. Lots of stuff in here. So let me just show you what the inside looks like right now. So got lots of, like, it looks like modular board pieces. Like they're all kinds of different shapes. So I don't know if I should like mess with all of them right now, but there's a whole bunch of them because then I might have trouble sticking them back into this insert. So let me just take out this whole insert section and see if there's anything underneath that as well. Yeah. Oh wow. Okay, yeah, it looks like there's a whole bunch of different tiles of these in here. Oh my god, there is so much stuff in here. Okay. This seems like a very involved game. We've got this campaign decks. Ooh, so it's got South Asian independence, American Revolution, Russian Revolution, Egyptian Revolution, and Mars 1AE. So I guess something from the future as well. Are these stickers? What are these? No, just some kind of a card or something. I don't know. Okay, yeah, so now let's see. We've got this, and it's got some cool metal pieces in here. That's nice. Oh, look at that. Oh, this is really cool. It's like, I think you can just stick it in here. Oh, that is so cool. It's like a flag you can put in there. Or there's this crown. I don't know. No, the crown doesn't fit on there, but there's this really cool crown as well. But it looks like the flag can fit in here. That's pretty cool. So it looks like it's a fort and a crown and a flag. It's like actually like written right into, oh, that's really helpful actually. I love that this insert actually tells you where certain things go by actually having like an imprint. So like all the infamy tokens go here and all the legacy tokens go here. So that will be really useful when it comes to organizing this game. A bunch of these empty boxes, don't know what goes in those. Here are a bunch of tokens. They look like crown tokens and there are a whole bunch of them. So wooden crown tokens it looks like. A lot more empty boxes. So again, do not know what goes in all of these. Okay, now we've got these, whatever these are, let's see. Maybe, I don't know what they are. I'm not even going to try to guess. So I don't want to say something that's completely wrong. Oh, it smells so good though. I really, really love that new board game smell. It's like so good. Oh. Yeah, smells really good. Okay, so there's that. This is really nice and thick, whatever this is. Very nice. Some more cards. These don't look super exciting. I'll just skip those for now. Ooh, I do like the artwork. The artwork is really cool. Like, look at that. Let me open these and see if there's other cool artwork on these cards. Yeah, there is. Very cool art style. Really like that. Oh, this is a box. Box within the. Oh, okay, it's a magnetic. Ah, that's really nice. I wonder what goes in here. Before drawing, oh, look, it gives you like instructions here. Interesting. And then it says your revolution has been silenced. And it looks like a lot of thought went into this production, like really nice. Super, super nice. Now there are a crap ton of cards to show you. Let's see. First, there are these things. They don't look like, are these cards? They're like a little bit thicker than everything else. Let's see what this is. Yeah, I guess they are. Looks like they open. Oh no, okay, that's interesting. Whatever these are, they open up. That is very interesting. Huh. So there's like a whole bunch of these. So there's these, and then there's several different packets of these things that open, whatever those are. So like there's this one, which is the Sullivan Expedition. And then we have the Bastar Intervention. So again, a bunch of those things that will open up. Then we have Treaty of Alliance. Very cool. Then we've got Patronage. And then we have Flag Raising. And then a whole bunch of cards. So there's a bunch of different small cards, like these ones. So these are forced, it looks like forced conscription. We've got these, just a whole bunch of different cards. Coup d'etat. And then so many more cards. Like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 giant stacks of cards here. So I guess I'll just maybe open up one of them for right now. I don't also want to get everything out of order because I honestly don't know what everything is. And I want to make sure it goes back properly. And if there's like a certain order to placing these, I don't want to mess them up. So yeah, okay, let's see. Oh my god, so many cards. These don't have artwork on them. They just have text on both sides. So yeah, just, oh, whoops, come back. Just a lot of different cards with text on them on both sides. Yeah. I'm just gonna take a look at some of the other packets and see if there's artwork, but if it's just all text, I'm not even gonna bother opening the other decks right now because again, don't know what everything is. But yeah, definitely not a game I would sleeve because there are like a billion cards. Yeah, it just looks like there's text on all of them. Yep, text, text, text. I wonder if these are all with the different kinds of revolutions or whatever you can play in this game. So yeah, so I think I've kind of shown you everything, and now I'm gonna have to figure out how it all goes back in the box. But yeah, this seems like a really involved game. Don't know what the playtime is on this. Let's see. It says 2 to 5 players, but I don't see a playtime. Yeah, age is 14 plus, which I can definitely understand given how complicated it all seems. So yeah, so this arrived a couple of weeks ago, and I guess I should play it someday. Yeah, and it came with a couple of, you know, expansions as well, which I showed in the video before, so I guess I can just open up one of them maybe right now and see what it looks like inside. So this is French Revolution. Ah, yeah, so those cards must be the different kinds of games that you can play within this one, because I think when I read the description, it talked about all the different revolutions or whatever you can play. So I think the stack of cards that doesn't have any pictures, like it's just the cards you're going to use for each game. Oh, and then, yeah. So yeah, and those little things. Yeah, so this box just contains cards and those. No rules, so I guess all you need to know in order to play, you just have your regular rule book and then a different set of cards and those like little folder thingies. So yeah, very interesting. It's got really good ratings on BGG. Seems pretty involved, so I just need to find the right group to play this with. And then hopefully talk about it someday. Because again, I think it's a review copy, so I suppose I should probably talk about it someday. And again, I really don't recall asking for it, but maybe I did. There's no email record of it, but maybe I filled out a form. I really don't know. Probably, because I don't know how else I would have ended up with it. So I guess I should play it someday. So yeah, so that is Shasn Azadi. So I guess I won't unbox the base game right now, because now I have to stick all of this back in. So yeah, so, you know, I guess you could check this out if this looks like something you're interested in, and I'll try to get it played someday soonish and talk about it. So yeah, so let's move on. So I don't really have any updates to give. I just want to say that February is going to be a super busy month for me. I'm going to be going on a work trip later this month. So there's going to be 2 weekends where I will not be able to shoot a weekly playback in February. So there will be a couple of weeks where we will not have a new video, but I'll let you know when that is. So I'm definitely going to be shooting a video next weekend. So you'll have a video that goes up on February 10th, but then I will not be able to shoot a video the weekend of the 15th or the 22nd. But hopefully I'll be back in March then. So yeah, so there's going to be 2 weeks in February where you will not see a video from me because of a work trip that I'm going on. But I've already got the cats covered, so I've already arranged for some people to help me out with feeding the colonies, because of course that's very important to me. And of course my own cats, you know, that goes without saying that they'll be taken care of. So yeah, so that's just a quick channel update, I guess. So let's move on. So let's do our fiction book club, and I finally read 3 chapters like I said I would, though I will admit I was falling asleep during 2 of them just because sometimes reading just makes me very sleepy. So for this week we were supposed to read chapters 12, 13, and 14. So I will say that while reading chapters 12 and 13, I was like, oh, here we go again. Like, you know, they're busy, like, you know, escaping and running away, and we're just like, you know, getting a lot of details about their travel and their surroundings. And I was just kind of like getting to the point, like, what is the plot? Like, they're just running and running and running. Like, is anything else going to happen? So I was just kind of getting a little bit frustrated. I was like, I need more action. So then in the last chapter that we read, chapter 14, it's when they actually, you know, get into port and you know, they're trying to figure out what to do. Oh, and we saw Vikram again appear in Fatima's dream, and he said that someone would appear who will help them until she decides that she no longer wants to help them, and then they'll need to be wary of her. So I thought that that was, you know, kind of ominous and interesting. So yeah, so Vikram appeared in a dream of Fatima's, which was cool, I guess, to see him again, and let's see if his prediction comes true. But basically they start getting help from this monk while they're on this boat, and then it turns out at the end of chapter 14 you learn that the monk was actually not as good as he pretended to be, and he's basically riding towards them at the end of chapter 14 on a horse, and yeah, we'll see what happens, I guess. But I'm at the point where I just really, really want something else to happen in this book. Like, I'm just like, they're just running away and just encountering different people, or, you know, just a lot of descriptions of the environment and stuff. And I'm like, I just need something more going on right now. So I'm just getting a little bit tired of all the, you know, flowery descriptions, which are really very descriptive. Like, if this is ever turned into a movie, I think it would make for a great movie, assuming that there's like a good plot and it actually, starts picking up a little bit. And it's, I guess, so maybe the book is really just about Fatima and Hassan's relationship, and I'm just expecting too much of it. I don't know. So of course I want to keep reading because I'm still intrigued, but I really hope it starts going somewhere else somewhere soon. So let me know what you think so far. So I think we're a little bit more than halfway through, just a little bit. So for next week, let's read chapters 15 and 16. And do we want to read more than that? Can I read more than that? I don't want to be over ambitious because I do find it hard to read a lot sometimes. Yeah, let's just actually read 2 chapters for next week, because if I feel like if I say 3, I'm not gonna end up needing it. So for next week, let's just read chapters 15 and 16. Unless you want to read ahead, of course you're welcome to read ahead. I'll just be a little bit behind you then. So for next week, let's read chapters 15 and 16, but let me know what you think, and let me know where you think this is going and whether you're still really into it. Yeah, I mean, hopefully it's going to go somewhere soon. So yeah, so that was The Bird King. So let's move on. So for our nonfiction book club, this week we were supposed to read chapter 4, which is the 3-in-1 Provincia Palestina, the 3 administrative provinces of Byzantine Palestine, 4th to early 7th centuries AED. Now, this is a history book, right? So you're just learning a lot of history about Palestine during different time periods. So it's not like there's like any like major I mean, I guess it's all a major revelation if you don't know much about this area during this time period, but it's not like, we're talking about like modern day settler colonialism and what's happening in Palestine today. This is giving you the history of Palestine from a long, long, long time ago and showing you how Palestine has always existed. So it's meant to show you that the lie that is often told by Zionists and settler colonialists today, and those who justify, Israel's apartheid and all of the other bad things that Israel does, it's meant to show you that the lie that they tell over and over again, that Palestine never existed, that Palestine was a land without people, it's a lie. It's not true. Like we keep on seeing throughout this book that Palestine has existed for a very long time, since before Christ, and it was called Palestine. So here we learn about when Palestine really was at its height, part of the Byzantine Christian Empire and so on. So the chapter starts by saying that the Christian Byzantines transformed urban Palestine socially, religiously, economically, and architecturally. And it was the center of strong, confident, and growing religion, which was born in the country, and continued to consider Palestine as a spiritual center even after placing the Catholic Church in the capital city of the Roman Empire. So, it mentions different famous people from back then, like Julian of Ascalon, who was a renowned Palestinian architect. It says he influenced Istanbul's urban planning and endured for more than 1,400 years. Let's see. It talks about the major cities during this time period and how Palestine was reorganized into 3 subdivisions. So there was Palestina Prima, which was the center of the country, Palestina Secunda, which was much of the Galilee, and Palestina Salutaris in the south and southeast. And it says that their lingua franca was Greek. And these 3 administrative provinces of Palestine lasted from the 4th to early 7th centuries. And then it gives some history about the naming of these 3 provinces and what inspired the naming and so on. I've highlighted a lot, but again, I don't want to just like regurgitate what the book said, but again, just very informative, showing you how Christianity like even flourished and how Palestine contributed so much to philosophy and learning and education and so much more. It talks about monasteries in Palestine, and it says the earliest monasteries in Christianity outside of Egypt were built in Palestine during the Byzantine era, notably that of the Saint Hilarion Monastery, one of Palestine's oldest Christian monuments, today located in the Gaza Strip. Would be very curious to know whether that monastery still exists, because as we've seen, Israel has completely obliterated the Gaza Strip. Like, there is like nothing left. Like, if you have seen images of the Gaza Strip today, you will know that there's like literally like nothing left. It is just complete rubble and will take God knows how many years to rebuild. So I'm just gonna look it up right now. Saint Hilarion Monastery, and let's see if it's still standing. I don't know if it still is. Because it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and I recall seeing a video many months ago about another UNESCO World Heritage Site which was destroyed by Israel. So I can't really find any news on it right now to see whether it's been destroyed or not. But yeah, so apparently that existed in the Gaza Strip. So it says the country consisted of a mixed Greek and Aramaic speaking population, minorities of Samaritans, Christian Arabs, the Ghassanids, who were the dominant group among the Monophysites and who believed in the single nature doctrine of Jesus, and Miaphysite Arabs, Jews, and Nabatean Arabs were present as well. Yeah, so it talks about all the different people that lived there and the different kinds of languages they spoke. And, you know, you can see that different religions were practiced as well. Again, it talks about different, you know, figures who were there throughout history. And like one of them, his name was Origen. That's Origen, and he helped create the Library of Caesarea and provided Caesarea Maritima with some of the cosmopolitan charisma and intellectual vigor of large cities such as Alexandria and Antioch. And it says he founded a Christian academy in Caesarea, which included the Library of Caesarea Palestina, an ecclesiastical and historical library of 30,000 manuscripts, and second only to the Library of Alexandria in its heyday. So again, we're learning so much about what a cosmopolitan place Palestine was and how it was like the center of so much during its time, like back in, you know, in ancient times. It was like such a cosmopolitan place where so much trade happened, so much education happened, learning happened, just like a really like amazing like place. Yeah, so that we don't learn about when we're learning history, when we're growing up in the West. I mean, I never knew this about Palestine before until reading this book, to be honest. Let's see. So, you know, it talks about more, of course, Christianity, blah, blah, blah. So let's see, making Palestine, so Christianity, making Palestine probably the best known country in the world at the time due to the many descriptions, artifacts, literary, religious, and historical works, which made it a household name within Christianity and beyond. You know, it talks about different works that existed, like the Martyrs of Palestine, which was a book that looks like it was written in, or it talks about the persecution of early Christians in the early 4th century AD. And it says here, the account may have originally been composed in Palestinian Aramaic, the language of Jesus of Nazareth. Hebrew at the time of Jesus was largely an extinct language, with the Jews of Palestine speaking Aramaic and Hebrew being confined to liturgical uses. I think this is really important because what you'll see is Hebrew was kind of reintroduced as a way to give legitimacy to Israel and help, you know, legitimize this belief that the Jews have always been there and have always been speaking Hebrew in Palestine for thousands of years. And that was not the case. So it's not the case. And, you know, Israel is always trying to rewrite history. And it's trying, you know, it appropriates so much of Palestinian culture too, like the food, for example. Like all these people who migrated from Europe to Palestine and settled there, the Jews who did that, you know, they've adopted what was Palestinian food and call it Israeli food, when in fact it's Palestinian food, like falafel and all these other Palestinian cuisines they try to pass off as being Israeli, when in fact it's Palestinian. But now you'll see restaurants call it Israeli food. But there, I recently saw a little bit of a documentary talking about how Israel has appropriated so much of Palestinian culture, including the food, and try to make it their own, when in fact it's not, it's Palestinian. Yeah, so it says, from the 4th century onwards, the Holy Land was transformed into a real country called Palestina, with thriving cities, ports, beautiful churches, and numerous monasteries, famous philosophical schools and libraries, an extensive road system, villages, and a large commercially and culturally active population. So yeah, just a lot of interesting stuff. So yeah, I'm just wondering what else I should highlight here. So yeah, you know, it talks a lot about Palestine having its own autonomy when it came to being like a center of Christianity. And it talks about, like, you know, how there was, like, you know, some places which were controlled by the head of the church in some parts of the world, but Palestine was largely autonomous when it came to Christianity and their practice of Christianity. Yeah, so then it goes into talking about Latin Palestine. So yeah. So it says the Latin Crusaders occupied Palestine in 1099 and founded the Crusader states in the Levant. The Crusaders appointed a Latin patriarch in Jerusalem. They also dismissed the principles of autocephaly and the independence of the Palestine Orthodox Church. So yeah, so you'll learn a lot about Latin Palestine. Says today Palestine and the Levant are considered to have been a channel for the transmission of Arabic learning to Europe. Wondering what else I should read out to you guys. It says the headquarters of the Palestine Orthodox Patriarchate is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. It dates back to 4th century Palestine. So I think we all know about that church. It's very famous. I remember reading some stuff that I thought was really interesting that I want to get to. Let me see. Oh yeah, this, the Madaba mosaic map. So this is one of the most powerful symbols of this urban Palestine during the spectacular era of late antiquity. So it says the map is the most famous and among the oldest surviving material evidence for the official use of the name Palestina in late antiquity. The city contains one of the greatest concentrations of mosaics from the Byzantine and Umayyad periods, and these mosaics are also a testimony to the spectacular Palestine mosaic industry, ancient, medieval, and modern. It says the map contains the oldest surviving original cartographical depiction of Byzantine Palestina. This part also contains details of some of the key cities of Palestina Prima, including Aelia Capitolina, Gaza, Ascalon, and Eleutheropolis. Yeah, and it says there is no mention of the terms Canaan or land of Israel on this historic map of late antiquity Palestine. This map is another powerful indication of the fact that the name Palestina was the official name of the country throughout early Christianity and late antiquity. Yeah, and then it talks about how talks about Gaza and Gaza's importance during this time and how it was one of the most important centers of learning in the country during the period. During that period, it was a seat of classical literature and rhetoric. And again, it talks about how, you know, the different populations that existed at that time in Gaza. It talks about education during this time and how it was like such an educational capital as well. Yeah. So, it talks about the importance of Palestine in education and Christianity. Like, this chapter discusses a lot of that. And so, let me just skip ahead and see. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just kind of a summary. And then it talks more, it talks about like monasticism, gosh, if I can just pronounce that word correctly, and about how that kind of originated in this part of the world, and so on. So I'm gonna just kind of talk about how we see from reading this chapter how important Christianity was in this part of the world, and how important this part of the world plays in Christianity all around the world. And so when you see Israel committing a genocide against the Palestinians, it's not just Muslims. Like I've said so many times before, there are Christian Palestinians who are suffering as well. And if, the news doesn't want to show them, Western media doesn't want to show how many of the Palestinians who live there and are being, also killed by Israel are Christian, and how their churches have been destroyed and all of that as well. Like you can literally, if you look for proper news sources, like authentic news sources coming from Palestine itself, by looking on TikTok and other apps where people are able to post their own stories and talk about what's happening to them, then you will see what's happening to the Christians of Palestine today, and how Israel does not care about them either. Like we've seen so many times Netanyahu like wishing the Christian world like a happy Christmas and this and that and blah blah blah, when on the flip side he's busy killing Christians, destroying their churches, and making sure that Israel just takes over every part of Palestine to create greater Israel, and just leaving the country in shambles for everyone, for the Muslims and Christians. So I think that this book is so important to show you how, it was such an important place in Christianity, and should be today if people knew their history. If people knew the importance of Palestine and what an important place it was throughout antiquity and ancient times, and how it has always been Palestine. And you would see that Israel is just trying so hard to rewrite history and erase history. And that's why they always target libraries and personal libraries too. I'm talking about like when I say we, I mean people like me who actually try to find firsthand accounts of what's happening in Palestine on the ground from actual Palestinians. We see so many homes have just been bombed because they want to leave no trace of the books and the family books that these people have that show the history of Palestine. They've, eliminated complete families and lineages. Like they've just destroyed so much in Palestine. And that's their goal. That's what a genocide is. And that's what ethnic cleansing is. You want to eliminate an ethnicity and pretend that, it was always yours. And it wasn't always theirs. Like we've seen from the beginning, the introduction up until now, at the end of chapter 4, how little of a role Jews actually had in Palestine in ancient times. And up until late antiquity, like very little mention of Canaan or Israel, or Judea. Like it just did not exist. Like it was Palestine. And it was a home to Christians and Jews, and Christians and Muslims, and before Christians and Muslims, it was home to polytheists. Like that's what we see. So people really need to learn their history so that they can be educated about the modern day settler colonialism that is actually happening in Palestine right now. So yeah, just a very informative book where we're learning so much about ancient Palestine, and that I think so many of us just did not know. Very, very interesting. So for next week, let's read chapters. I'm just wondering how long this would be. So I think we can read 2 chapters because chapter 5 is pretty short. So let's read chapters 5 and chapters 6. So chapter 5 is Arab Christian Palestine, the pre-Islamic Arab kings, bishops, poets, and tribes of Provincia Palestina, 3rd to early 7th centuries AD. So that goes from page 135 to 150. And then we have chapter 6, the Arab province of Jund, Palestine, 638 to 1099 AD. Continuities, adaptation, and transformation of Palestine under Islam. So yeah, so let's read that. So that would be from page 135 to 188, which is about 50 pages. So let's read that for next time. So chapters 5 and 6 for next time. So yeah, so let me know what really stood out to you about chapter 4 in the comments below, and what you make of all of this, and you know, how you tie it into what's happening today in Palestine, because the genocide is ongoing. There is a ceasefire, and yes, and Palestinians have, not all of them, some of them have been allowed to return to their homes in Gaza, but there are issues of people being blocked from returning and so on, of course. And of course, we've seen a lot of killing happening in the West Bank, as Israel is now really going full steam ahead with this genocide in the West Bank. So let me know how you relate all of this to what's going on today, and what you make of it all, and what you found really interesting in this book for this week. And again, please read chapters 5 and 6 for next week. So that was Nonfiction Book Club, and let's move on. So I just want to talk about something for a little bit. So as we know, Holocaust Remembrance Day happened recently, and someone from this industry made a post, and I want to talk about his post. And I guess you can already guess who I'm going to be talking about. So Eric Lang made a post on Facebook on January 27th, and he wrote, "As someone with generations of family who fought on the wrong side of this, remember the Holocaust, always. Also, remember that the Holocaust technically started in 1933, but the seeds were planted decades before, as anti-Semitism became gradually and increasingly normalized. Remember that nobody is immune to dehumanizing propaganda, and it could absolutely happen again. Treat Holocaust denial and minimizing as hate speech, because it is." I find this statement to be incredibly infuriating, coming from someone who has ignored the ongoing Holocaust. There are so many hundreds of thousands of anti-Zionist Jews around the world who have been calling the genocide in Gaza, which has been going on since October 2023, a Holocaust. Like, what I saw on Holocaust Remembrance Day of all the anti-Zionist Jews, which I follow on various social media platforms, talked about the genocide in Gaza, and they kept on saying that no lessons were learned from the Holocaust, because Israel is doing to the Palestinians what happened to Jews during World War II, what the Nazis did with the genocide against the Jews. But here is Eric Lang acting like it's not been ongoing, like there is no current Holocaust happening. He has ignored the genocide of the Palestinians, has never once condemned the genocide, has never talked about it, and now here he is saying that it could happen again. It's already happening. It's been happening since October 2023. We've seen countless Jews, so many Jews, call what is happening in Gaza a genocide and call it another Holocaust. You know, it's not just Muslims and Christians and atheists who have been calling it a Holocaust. So many people have called it that. I mean, there's a reason that people were calling Kamala Harris Holocaust Harris, because there's an ongoing Holocaust. Like, that's what it is. And he's acting like it has not been happening for, over a year now. Like, there's been an ongoing genocide for over a year, and he's acting like that's not the case. He's acting like it could happen. Like, oh, you should be careful because it could absolutely happen again. It's already fucking happening. Like, it's been happening. And he's like, nobody is immune to dehumanizing propaganda. Like, hello, like, he himself is not immune to dehumanizing propaganda, because clearly it's had some effect on him, because here is someone who claims to be a champion of human rights and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and blah, 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 yet has never condemned the genocide, has never condemned Zionism. Like, he's not done the bare fucking minimum. Like, he hasn't even done the bare fucking minimum of calling it what it is, which is a genocide, and condemning the genocide, not once since October 2023. And what do we see? We see, at the moment I'm making this video, 196 likes on this post, and not one single comment saying to him, but Eric, there's been an ongoing genocide. Like, why don't you talk about that? Like, why is no one in this fucking industry, like, willing to stand up to people who act like They are the ultimate voice on talking about human rights and DEI. Why will no one stand up to them and let them know when they are clearly in the wrong? He is clearly in the wrong here. There's been an ongoing genocide and no one is saying this to him. No one is telling him, if I wasn't blocked on Twitter or, other platforms by him, then I could tell him myself. But I'm not going to, because I will, for any platforms he doesn't have me blocked on, he will just block me immediately. He doesn't want to listen to anything I have to say, which was evident from 2021 when I called him out on his really bad take on Palestine, for which he never apologized. But at this point, I'm, suspecting that he is a Zionist himself, because he gets his paycheck from Zionist companies. This we already know. This I've already talked about many, many, many videos ago, early on when the genocide began. We looked at who publishes his games and who the parent companies are and where his paychecks come from. They come from Zionists. We've never seen him condemn a Zionist publisher. We've never seen him speak about what evil Zionism is, which we know. Zionism is basically, if you're a Zionist, you support apartheid. If you're a Zionist, you support genocide. If you're a Zionist, you support racism and bigotry and the dehumanization of Arabs and Palestinians. And that includes both Christian Palestinians and Muslim Palestinians. So he's never condemned the genocide, he's never condemned Zionism, and now he comes out with a statement saying that the Holocaust could happen again, ignoring the Holocaust that has been happening since October 2023. And if you follow reputable news sources, not the bullshit Western media, you will know that the numbers which have been reported of Palestinians killed is not accurate. It is not accurate. Why has it stayed still at 40,000 since God knows when? It's not accurate. And if you look at the news sources that will accurately report on what's happening, they will tell you that the number is far, far higher. And I saw a number recently saying that the death toll of people killed by Israel is very likely around 1 million people, because if you are looking at the actual existing population now of Palestine, it is very low. And even Trump, I saw from a source that he had spouted a number while talking about Palestine at one point, and the number he said of Palestinians that he needs to get out of Palestine was very low compared to what it would have been before the genocide began. So inadvertently admitted how many Palestinians Israel and the United States have actually killed. But here you have someone who's, championed in the industry as being a champion of human rights, who is completely denying that a genocide has happened, is ongoing, and is warning people that it could happen again. Just complete bullshit. And I don't understand why people like Eric Lang are worshipped in this industry. When you see shitty takes, call them out. Seriously, educate people. Here is someone who thinks that he knows everything about everything when clearly he fucking doesn't. And at this point, I suspect that he is a Zionist himself, which is why to this day, his takes on Palestine are always so shitty. And maybe he feels the need to say something which makes it seem like he cares about human rights in Palestine. So whenever something begins, he will issue a shitty take and then never talk about it again, because he needs to give that impression to everyone that he cares, when in fact, it seems like he really fucking doesn't. You really fucking don't. If you want to take away lessons from the Holocaust, never again means for fucking everyone, not just Jews. His whole post is talking about anti-Semitism and how it could happen again. It's not just about fucking anti-Semitism. It applies to everyone. There should not be a genocide of anyone, of any ethnicity, of any religious group, but there is an ongoing genocide of Palestinians, completely ignored by Eric and his buddies and other people in this industry like him. Complete utter bullshit. What do I see? I see people making a bigger fuss about AI art than they do about an actual genocide that has been ongoing. And here you see people complaining about Trump and all the horrible things he's doing, which yes, he is doing. And now they can be self-righteous and talk about, oh yeah, all the things that Trump is doing are so horrible. Yet when the Democratic Party was doing the same fucking things silence, complacency. And this is what I'm talking about. When the Democratic Party is in power, what you see is complacency, and you see silence, and you don't see people standing up for the groups that need to be stood up for, like the Palestinians. And what do we see? We see people like, who were talking about how Trump is going to be so much worse for Palestinians, using the ongoing genocide of the Palestinians to make a point, to just get points for themselves, like, oh, haha, like I was right and you were wrong. Like, all you're doing is you're fucking showing that you never cared for the Palestinians if you are using an ongoing genocide to just rub it in people's faces and act like we didn't know that this was going to happen. Like, those of us who voted third party knew whether it was Trump or Kamala who came into power, like, it was going to be fucking bad for the Palestinians. And need we remind you that Kamala said she would change nothing, that she would not stop Israel from getting what it wants, from doing what it wants. Like, she made that abundantly clear. So whether it would have been Kamala or Trump, same fucking thing. Like, we would not have seen any difference. So rubbing the genocide in people's faces just shows what a shitty human you are, if that is what you're doing at this point in time. So yeah, just really, really sick of the shitty humans in this industry who act like they care about human rights when clearly they're on the wrong side of history for staying silent about this genocide. Like, this post of Eric's was just so infuriating. Like, there's been an ongoing genocide and not one person has said that to him. Like, seriously, just unbelievable. Like, seriously unbelievable. And these are the kinds of people that are worshipped in this industry as being champions of human rights. Like, no, not all humans hold the same value in these people's eyes. If their paychecks come from Zionists, and maybe they're Zionists themselves, like maybe Eric Lang is a Zionist himself, who really knows? Because he's never condemned Zionism, so maybe he is. And that's why we get to see takes like this, which is the same kind of take you see from Zionists. Like, if you follow anti-Zionist Jews, every anti-Zionist Jew I follow on Holocaust Remembrance Day mentioned the ongoing genocide of the Palestinians and the lessons that should be learned from the Holocaust, which clearly were not learned. So yeah, so that's all I have to say about that. And again, I just, like, for people who claim that, oh, we should make board games political, like Eric does all the time, yet ignores a very, big thing that's happening right now, like just complete utter bullshit. Like, hypocrisy is just insane that, his hypocrisy is just always completely overlooked by everyone else. It's just infuriating. So yeah, I feel like I'm the only one who calls it out and no one does. And I just feel like I'm a broken record. But if more people called it out, then maybe we would see some change. But no one does. No one else does. I'm the only one who seems to be talking about Zionism and what a horrible, evil thing it is. But we saw, another thing I've seen recently is, talk about how Gen Con should not be in Indianapolis because this, state is doing such horrible things and blah, blah, blah. Like, if you think back to the Gen Con that happened in 2024, when there was that role-playing event that was supposed to happen from a company that said Zionists cannot enter, and there was that mini controversy about that. No one commented on that. No one talked about it in the board games industry. No one talked about how Zionism is bad, and this I don't know if they're a publisher or what they are. This company was on the right side of history saying that no, Zionists should not be allowed to participate in our competition. We do not tolerate Zionism. Because Zionists are the same fucking thing as Nazis. If you don't tolerate Nazis, you should not be tolerating Zionists. Same fucking thing. But in the board games industry, people just completely ignore the fact that Gen Con was like, oh no, Zionists should be completely allowed and you can't prevent Zionists from participating in certain activities. It's basically saying you can't prevent Nazis from participating in certain activities. You can't prevent the Ku Klux Klan from participating in certain activities. Zionists are the same fucking thing as Nazis, as the KKK. If you can't fucking see that, I don't know what else to say to you. You have the resources available to read and educate yourselves if you fucking want to. There is no excuse for Eric Lang to be silent about Zionism and the genocide because he has all the resources at his fingertips if he really fucking cared. But he is showing that he does not fucking care. Suzanne Sheldon is showing that she does not fucking care. She will talk more about how AI art is ruining the industry and blah blah, 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 and completely has ignored an ongoing genocide, even though on Twitter, her profile said anti-genocide. Like, really, are you anti-genocide? Because you've never mentioned Palestine, not even once, not once. You see people like, you know, that one person who wants to organize another fundraiser for PCRF supporting Zionist publishers. Like, to be very clear, you cannot claim to be pro-Palestinian if you support Zionists. There is not a single Palestinian who would want your money if you are completely indifferent to Zionists and act like it's okay to support Zionism while trying to say that you're pro-Palestinian. It's completely contradictory. It makes no fucking sense. It's the same as saying you support Jews while supporting Nazis. Like, you just cannot do this both. You cannot do both at the same time. You cannot support Nazis and claim to be supporting Jews at the same time. You just can't. You can't claim to be pro-Palestinian while supporting Zionists. You just cannot. And we still see people supporting the Zionist publishers and designers in this industry, like Kids Table Board Gaming, Burnt Island Games, Isaac Shalev, and so many others who are known Zionists. So yeah, this industry clearly is not going to change when you have people like Eric Lang, you know, who are openly showing that they just do not fucking care about the genocide of Palestinians, and maybe he's a fucking Zionist himself. Who the hell knows? So yeah, so that is my rant of the week. So let's move on. So 2 questions of the week. The first is, what other games exist about bears? The only other game I can think of is Barren Park. I think it's about building a park or creating a park for bears. I think I played it once, I owned it, and then I culled it immediately because I just wasn't that into it, and I feel like that there are way better polyomino games out there, and by far the worst insert ever, if you could even call it an insert, what that game came with. So that's the only other game I can think of that has to do with bears. Let me know if you know of any other games that have to do with bears. And then the second question of the week is, what are some of your favorite 2-player games? This is a really good 2-player game, and I want to know what are some of your favorites in the comments below that are also like quick playing as well, but strategic. And until next week, bye.